Today I have for you a simple DIY project that combines the best of both of these. If you've spent any time at all working with beads, you've probably discovered these little velour mats are invaluable in keeping you from having to chase your beads all over the place with your needle. But if you work with projects that use lots of beads, you've probably found that they tend to all get mixed up on these mats. And so a tray like this can be a better way of sorting them. But the beads can be kind of tricky to pick up in these little plastic or sometimes they're metal trays. Hi there, Sandy here. Welcome to another Friday Findings video at keepsakecrafts.net. Be sure to stay to the end of the video to see the absolutely insane project that is what got me started making these bead organizer mats. This is my first prototype of this project. I used a ratty old beading mat, and by the way, you can tell these do not last forever. They last a good long while though, especially considering their price. So this was my first testing of this concept. I will say that I actually prefer picking up the beads from the mat right in front of me. But what I did here was I tested round cutouts and square cutouts, and I tested them one layer of the velour deep, and then over here 2 layers deep. And I decided I actually like the rounds just a little bit better. I'm not sure why, I just do. Just something about the shape I liked working with just a little better, but the squares were fine. And I definitely preferred just the one layer. Like I said, I actually prefer no layers, just working with the beads right on top of the mat. But if you have a whole bunch of beads, it's nice to have them sorted and somewhat corralled. As you can see, these over here are starting to spill into each other. So this is what you'll need to start with, is one of these velour mats. These you can find many places. These are 9 by 12. They come in a few different sizes. I found these in a set of 3 for $3 at Hobby Lobby. They are $1 each at Dollar Bead Box. You can buy them on Amazon. And you'll need at least one of these. Basically one for every bead mat of this size that you're going to make. And I chose to make them this size. Here's one that's squares, one that's circles, more on that, because they fit perfectly in these trays. I'll have a link to these. I found these on eBay and they're terrific. If you wanted to make one that is the full 9 by 12 width, then you'll need 2 of these. I don't really recommend that though. In fact, I think probably having only 2 rows deep, I have a feeling I'm going to have a problem with dragging my hands through things. Just having this many, a dozen or 15 on a mat, we'll see. I'll plan it out and I'll let you know how it works out. But if I'm going to have more than this, I think I would rather have 2 smaller ones that I can move around and be a little bit more nimble. Now all of these samples that I worked up, I did last night in under an hour. So you can make one of these really quickly. The part that takes the most time is laying it out. So my idea is that you're going to take one of these, you're going to make cutouts in one half, and then glue the other half over. You'll need to decide how big you want your cutouts to be. So I have here just a little acrylic quilting template. If this is 1.5 inches square, but you can just cut this out of some cardboard, out of a piece of foam core, anything that you have that's rigid. I also have a circle die, which we can use. There's several different ways you can do this. Or you can just trace around an object that's about 1.5 inches in diameter if you want the round holes. Now if you want a bit more spacing around these, then you can just do 12 on a mat. If you want to fit more and have them a little bit closer, I was able to fit 15. And you can do the same with circles or squares. They'll fit in the same spaces. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark the halfway point on my mat. So this will work pretty much with any size that you have. So it's just a smidge over 12 inches. So I'll mark it just about 6 inches. I'm using a Sharpie. This will not show on your final piece because it will be folded and glued to the inside. So I'm just going to mark halfway, and that way I will know the space that my holes will fit into. So it will just be in this half and the other half will be folded over. Now if you want to fit 15 cutouts, you're going to have 5 this way and 3 this way and about 3/8 of an inch in between each one. If you want to adjust this, then feel free. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark about 3/8 here. One of these little quilting rulers is fantastic because you can see along the whole length. And I'm just going to mark. I'm also going to find the halfway point, which this is 9 inches, so there's 4.5, and I'll center my little template. This is why a template is really handy, because I can just lay that on there and draw around my template. And then I'll draw the line for the other ones. I mean, honestly, you could just place these any way you want. They don't have to be in a neat pattern, but that's kind of how my brain works. So another 3/8. And I'm just going to slide that up. And then another line. And another 3/8. And slide that up, and that's just about right. This is maybe a little big, but it doesn't matter. Then we'll just turn it a 1/4 turn and 3/8. If you're interested in any of these supplies, be sure to take a look down in the description box or go to my blog post where I have a list of links to everything I can find a link to. Mark the other ones. And repeat until you have the whole grid laid out. I just want to take a minute to say thank you so much to those of you who are supporting me on Patreon. It makes a huge difference as to whether or not this channel stays up on YouTube. I love making these videos for you, and I always want to keep my YouTube videos free for everyone, but they are not free for me to put together. They cost me a fair amount in time, energy, materials, and I love doing it. In fact, I love doing it so much that I make bonus videos for my patrons. I have lots of different levels at Patreon, including the opportunity to get up to 2 bonus tutorials every month, to get a free Etsy class of mine, and also for me to make you a custom piece of jewelry. So go take a look at those at patreon.com/SandySewn. And when you're done, it should look something like this. At this point, you can decide whether you want square or round cutouts because they will both work. And there are a few different ways you can do this. This stuff cuts beautifully and easily, and you can just go in with a nice sharp pair of scissors. It doesn't take long. And just cut out your squares. When we fold that over, there's 1. If you want circles instead of squares, lay it out the exact same way, but then find something round and trace around it. This is actually a little bit big. It cuts out an 1.5 inch circle, but it's a little bit bigger. So I'll cut just a little inside that line. And you may not get perfect circles this way, unless you cut a little bit more carefully than I'm doing right now. Well, that's messy. But you get the idea. If you'd prefer to move a little bit more quickly, if you have any sewing or quilting equipment like a cutting mat and a rotary cutter, you can make pretty quick work of this. You'll just have to be careful with the overcuts. A rotary cutter is basically a round razor blade. So when we're cutting to the corners, in order to get all the way to the corner, you'll have to do a slight overcut. And again, these little quilting rulers are awesome. And what I would suggest you do, instead of using a ruler, because it's too easy to cut too much, is actually cut around your template. And this makes really quick work. You just have to do a very slight overcut. And if you're right-handed, cut on the right side and the top. And if you're left-handed, cut on the left side and the top, and then spin it. Don't try to go like this. It's too easy to cut yourself. There. So that makes quick work of that, and it's a little bit neater perhaps than using the scissors, but you get the same effect. Another thing you can do is if you have ever done any scrapbooking and have a die cutting machine, which is what this is, it is a die for a die cutting machine, you can cut those circles super easy. And what I did on mine was I folded it in half and did 2 layers at a time because it didn't fit in the machine the other way. So you just lay that on. And you'll know if you have a machine like this, you'll know what kind of sandwich that you need to make. And you have beautiful circle cutouts. You could do a combination of circles and squares. That sounds like fun. Now your velour will seem kind of flattened and sad after running through the die cutting machine. Just give it a tumble in the dryer, maybe wet it down a little, give it a tumble, it'll fluff right up again. So there's 3 different ways you can cut out your shapes using whatever tools you happen to have on hand. And here's mine all cut out. That's kind of fun. And you can see this is how it will be when it's finished. So now the final thing is to do some gluing. If you have all straight edges like on this one, you can use a dry adhesive tape like this. It's very strong, it's going to hold. What you want to be sure that you do is when you apply it, you want to make sure that you get right to the edges so that you won't be allowing any of your little beads to sneak underneath. So there'll be no unglued spaces between the 2 layers of your bead mat. So this stuff is great. It holds really well. It'll want to peel up when you first get it, so you just kind of scooch off the sticky bit. It's basically a double-sided tape. It's very strong. And then you pull this off, and of course you do all the way around. And then the way you do this is you carefully line up those edges and then smooth it back like this. And you can see that is stuck down really, really well. The only issue you might have is there may be a little bit of stickiness right here. Just get a tiny bit of talcum powder or cornstarch on a brush and just brush it and wipe it off, and that will get rid of any stickiness. And you can see that's on there just fine. That's going to hold. However, that tape is pretty tricky to do if you have circles. So what you can do is use spray adhesive. Whatever spray adhesive you have, make sure it will work for fabric, and follow the directions. Usually you have to shake it quite a bit. I always bring my pieces outside. And what you want to do is cover this side. Just mask it off with a piece of paper. Spray this part with the spray adhesive, and then ever so carefully bring this over. Once it touches, it is stuck. So just ever so carefully bring this over, line up your edges, and then smooth it back this way. And you'll end up with a piece somewhat like this. I did test a few other adhesives just to see how they worked in case you didn't have spray adhesive or that dry tape adhesive. This one was done with a line of tacky glue, and that's holding just fine. I tested these because I was concerned that it might bleed through or wick through the mat, but it really didn't. There's a little bit of a hard lump here, but it's no big deal. So tacky glue will work fine. It's just tough to get it on there neatly, and even more so E6000. Again, it worked fine. This is holding, and this is actually softer and more flexible than the tacky glue. But the E6000 is even more tricky to get in there neatly. And so you may have issues with it oozing through the edges and such. This one I don't recommend at all. This is super glue, and I know you can't feel it on camera, but I can feel this huge lump. It somehow reacted with the velour. I put a very thin line of super glue, and this is like 5 times wider and hard and just kind of unpleasant, so I wouldn't recommend that. The final thing is to label them. And I found the best thing to do for that is to use a P-Touch labeler. I just put like 2 spaces in between each and then print. Cut those apart so you can have any labels you want. You can label them with letters, numbers, words, whatever works for you. And they stick very nicely. But they'll also peel off fine. Although if once you peel it off, it's not going to stick very well again. So I have a beading project coming up that uses 25 different colors. I think I must have lost my mind. It's an absolutely gorgeous pattern, but it uses 25 different colors. This is what inspired me to make this beading mat. So wish me luck on this project. I'll share it on my Instagram when it's done. If it's done? No, it will get done. I'll be creating.